Hi, my name is Dr. Kelly Clarke, and today I would like to talk about happiness. There is a whole science out there of people that are researching on what happiness is. And I definitely have had people come in to see me talking about their own happiness and how to improve that. And I'm also aware of research, for example, in people over 65 years old. People 65 and older, 30% of the time develop things like depression. Something, of course, changes after 65, and clearly we can think of some of those things: the decline of physical health, the absence of friendships, the decline of cognitive abilities. Some of these things certainly can contribute to not feeling happy in people after 65. But I think it's also things about one's attitude and priority and values in life. So I wanted to talk a little bit about happiness today. What does happiness mean to you? What does it mean to me? Well, these researchers have come up with some ideas around what generally happiness means for people. And the first idea that I want to talk about is hedonic. And, kind of a fancy word, hedonism is basically the interest in pleasure. So most of us, all of us probably, would like to have more pleasurable things happen to us than painful things. Even though I think that there is definitely a psychology in suffering, that people that learn how to suffer well will be people that are ultimately more at peace and happy in their lives than those who do not learn how to suffer well. But first of all, clearly the priority for a lot of us is hedonic. We want to enjoy more pleasurable things. So having, the boat, the car, the paid off house, these kind of a trip to Mexico every year, these kind of things, of course, a lot of us enjoy and seek. I think a lot of us priorities, we want things that are enjoyable in our lives, activities, a new mountain bike, a new dirt bike, these kind of things. And there's certainly nothing wrong with that. Research shows, though, that when people purely pursue hedonism or hedonic things that are pleasurable, that pursuit of it actually inverts the happiness of people. So that is the main pursuit, the decline of happiness is going to be more steady and more readily happening for these people when hedonism or hedonic pleasure is the main priority in a person's life. In fact, I'll get into that a little bit more. I wanted to cover the other two areas that generally we look for when we're thinking of happiness. Another is evaluative. We tend to, a lot of people, including myself, I remember going through the various degrees that I achieved and needed to do the work that I'm doing. And there was definitely a real pleasure in being able to finish one degree and then another degree and then the degree that ultimately led to me to being a psychologist. I felt great pleasure or happiness in being able to achieve those degrees. And so that evaluative stance that I was able to achieve this. For a lot of us, it might be finances, that by the time I'm 40, I want to have $100,000 in the bank, or by the time I'm 50, I want to have X amount of dollars in the bank, or this many cars, or the house paid off. And so there's this evaluative stance. And when people do not have enough money, or they haven't attained, they evaluate that I have not attained the goals that I was hoping to. There often can be sadness or despair or a lack of happiness. As opposed to when we do feel like we are doing these things, we are achieving these goals, there is that feeling of happiness. The problem with evaluative is that we can tend to be always on that path. So instead of just, going on a trip and enjoying the trip, enjoying the sights and the smells and the relationships, we had to, do the zip line. We had to make sure we went swimming. We had to make sure that we got all our shopping done. So only when we're evaluating that we've met these goals, that we've met these priorities, can we be happy. So you can see that there's a real kind of a cyclical turmoil that can, if you're only happy when you achieve these goals, what happens if you don't? Does that mean you can't be happy if you achieve these goals? Clearly, for some people, that's not true. They can still not achieve certain goals and still be happy. Another one is purpose. And this is probably very close to many people's heart: meaning, existentialism. And the amazing psychologist Viktor Frankl, who was a survivor of the Holocaust and was a person that saw atrocious things happen, wrote a book on basically, it's called logotherapy, but essentially is on existentialism, finding purpose or meaning in life. And Viktor Frankl says the amazing line in his book that while watching people die all around him and even his own life, he had no choice about whether this life of his was going to be taken. What he realized, the only thing that he had control of was his own choice. So he could decide how he was going to face his own death and terrible atrocities. He had the ability to choose, and for him that was meaningful, very meaningful. So for Viktor Frankl, he came up with a whole therapy that meaning making is essential for happiness. And I clearly agree that that is definitely a strong part, even though there are, studies that would say that some people do not necessarily need to meaning make to be happy in their lives. That when sometimes atrocities or difficult things happen to them, they did not need to, find a relevance. Why did God make this happen? Or find meaning in, some maybe a higher being guiding them, or say even, that they didn't find purpose in, say, somebody dying prematurely, but that they accepted it. They were able to move through it, even though they didn't meaning make. So there are some studies around that too, but clearly meaning making and purpose in life are hugely important. And I think that's one of the reasons why, religions have such power for humanity, is because there's a lot of purpose and a lot of hope innate in religions. So, it's clear that these three areas are definitely features of being happy. Martin Seligman, who is a positive psychology person, would call these kind of things PERMA. So he also would say that there's 5 things: positive emotion, engagement, relationships, meaning, which I've just talked about, and accomplishment, back to that evaluative stance. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about these kind of things. So, back to, hedonism, there's studies of just seeking pleasure. Then when we have great things happen, get a new job, get a new relationship, buy a new boat or something like that, when that is the main thing that makes you happy in life, that quickly fades and we go back to a baseline of what we were previously at. So just seeking pleasure and those kind of things often fades and does not satisfy ultimately for people. So your brain adapts to good things. So happiness comes more from a practice, not prizes, more from an attitudinal disposition, than from securing things or pleasure. So one of the biggest, strongest predictors of happiness in life is relationships. You'll see this, I'm sure you've read a lot of that. Having one genuine conversation a day, having several quality relationships, not quantity, but quality relationships where somebody gets you. This is important for happiness and a satisfaction in life. Being kind on purpose to others also leads to high levels of happiness. Also, another area, how you talk to yourself, self-compassion, being kind to oneself is also a high predictor of happiness. Those of us that have negative self-talk, see negative future orientations for ourselves, can't see anything good in our lives, can't see anything good about us, these things clearly don't correlate well with happiness. So trying to build positive self-talk. In fact, I remember reading a study by Dr. David Burns mentioned in his book. He said that just even by people, with some of the work that he did, even by just getting people to click with a clicker every time they had a negative thought or a negative self-talk, just clicking it, not adjusting the thought, made them feel less depressed because now they're aware of the volume of negative self-talk that they had. So trying to reduce that negative self-talk, just being aware of it, often leads to greater levels of happiness. But clearly those who have positive self-talk, who are self-compassionate, feel happier. So talking to yourself is a big one. Meaningful effort, helping others. This is something that Dr. Frankl said in his report. He would encourage his patients who were very down, discouraged, depressed, even in that state, go do something kind to people. Go help your community, volunteer, be useful. These kind of things make you or help you feel better because meaningfulness feels right and it feels good. It's positive. Now, what clearly lowers happiness? Constant comparison, social media comparison. We've all heard of FOMO, fear of missing out, not being part of the group, perfectionism, chronic busyness. When we're too busy, we forget what makes life satisfying. Now we're just really living to fulfill a schedule rather than living to fulfill our lives. Rumination, overthinking, going over about things like that. Now, if you ruminate, this is something as a psychologist, I would encourage you to come see someone like me or some other psychologist, because that over ruminating, being stuck, often means something needs to be attended to. And so this is something that I would say, if you're over ruminating, you might want to see a psychologist, because they can help you take a look at this leftover, address what's going on there, and then hopefully you can move on from that. So a lack of rest, if you're constantly busy, not getting proper sleep, good self-hygiene, self-care, that can lead to unhappiness. So another area that's clearly a benefit for us with happiness studies is gratitude, being thankful, even for the small things. So, even trying for the next 2-3 weeks to reflect on your life and say, what am I thankful for today? What went right today, even if it's small? So, the idea is even if you don't feel like doing it, it's behave your way to success. So saying positive things, reminding yourself, being appreciative of things happening helps you. In fact, I think that's linked to even savoring studies. Psychologists will say that the ability to savor, reflect on life, and enjoy it is such a great ability. So I would even say, going back to even the idea of grounding. And I'm not sure if you know what grounding is, but literally putting the feet on the ground, connecting to your body, noticing your breathing, noticing what your eyes are looking at. I've noticed even, as a parent, there have been times where I've, playing Lego for several hours, get a little bored. And so I want to enjoy my kids. So I'll ground myself and I will draw their faces, their eyes, their lips, their nose, so that it grounds me and brings me back to that moment. So again, almost that idea of savoring. I want to be grounded and connected. We've all heard of those people that have gone to find themselves on a bike trip through the mountains for several months, or do a road trip where they're gone for months and sleeping on the hard floor and looking at starry nights. That's to me is almost that metaphysical, that grounded. You're connected to the environment. I mean, nowadays we are so connected to the internet, to staying at home, to watching TV. 100 years, 150 years ago, we didn't have any of this. We were more outdoors, more grounded, more lying on the ground, sleeping, these kind of things. So for me, I would suggest more of that kind of grounded. Notice your own breathing, your body, what you're looking at, and savor those moments. Those people that can reflect, take a good breath, savor the smells. These are things, if we did those practices, we would be happier. So being aware of some of those things are just some of the things that I wanted to talk about today. I also wanted to think about those things in your own life. Thinking about, have you done things like holding a door open for somebody, complimenting somebody, saying something nice, saying thank you in a text, back to that thankfulness. Getting out there, being active. One of the things, a fancy term for dealing with depression, positive event scheduling. Getting out there, having fun, movement, doing activities, stretching, dancing, doing a 10-minute walk. All of these things are great activities. But I do want to bring you back to some of those kind of first things that I was mentioning. Where I was talking about hedonic, evaluative, and meaning. Where are you putting the eggs in the basket? and trying to have a different attitude and intentionality about how we live and where we prioritize things, I think will make us happy. Hopefully that helped you to think a little bit about things. Reflect on your own life. Ask yourself, am I satisfied? Am I feeling happy? Notice your feelings. Notice how that feels for you to ask that question. And maybe look at areas where am I, prioritizing hedonism a little bit too much, which is not a bad thing. We all want pleasurable things. Am I prioritizing, clicking off the boxes, evaluating? God always meets these goals. Am I thinking about what's meaningful and purposeful for me in this life? Some of the things I'd ask you to think about. And for more information, feel free to go to drkellyclarke.com. Thank you for listening today. And I'm glad that you took the time to listen to me.